Basically, since I was 19 years old, I have been working in college athletics and recently transitioning to esports in the professional realm. And so what that has done is kind of put me in this perspective where I have been working with people in this millennial age group for my entire career. And so, definitely want to share with you guys just some of the experiences that I've had and some of the things that I've seen in my work, and hopefully you can kind of see as we kind of go through here some of the connections to just not only your organization as a whole, but the connection to the people as well. So I know Sean kind of had his first 5 minutes and he stole my first 5 minutes, which is totally fine. No worries. We were talking about describing millennials, right? Like, what does this look like? So if I recall correctly, I think I heard fragile, frustrating, any other F words or any other words that I missed, or anything that anybody's super passionate about that they want to just shout out right now? Any visuals that come to mind when we think of millennials? Well, I'll tell you what millennials think work looks like, okay? They think that they're gonna line up their roller chairs and they're gonna be pushed to the ice cream social, and the boss is just gonna be sitting in the background smiling and everybody's gonna be having a great time, right? So one of the interesting things about this younger generation is there is kind of this mix of their life, but also their work life. And so, just in line with the frustrating part about older people working with this younger generation, some of the headlines that come to mind are millennials are so entitled. Millennials are addicted to social media. Millennials are spending all their money on avocado toast, right? And these are great to catch our attention on YouTube and to talk about, but I really think that a lot of what we're talking about today is leadership. And it's on the leaders of the organization, and it's on us as leaders to really meet this younger generation where they are. And so when we think about really kind of how to deal with these younger people, or some of the challenges that are at play when we're dealing with these younger people, I think sometimes we have a tendency to maybe complicate things or think that things are bigger than they are. We were talking about millennials, and everybody's talking about being frustrated. And trust me, spending 15 plus years dealing with this age group, I totally identify. And I guess maybe in a way, I've just become used to it, because I know I'm gonna have to explain myself 7 or 8 times and follow up another 7 or 8 times. But I think sometimes it becomes a little complicated. And what I really like to try and do is to simplify things as much as possible. And I think that the things that I've come up with in my career and that I've seen is that the key to motivating and leading not only millennials, but people, is connection, and creating that connection as leaders. So this is Tom Coughlin. For those of you that don't know, Tom Coughlin is or was the head coach of the New York Giants. And so right here, I've got 2 pictures of him at the pinnacle of his career, winning Super Bowl championships. Now, what you don't see is before the 2007 season, if the people that are not familiar with football are familiar with Tom Coughlin, you might know him because he was fining his players for being on time. Is anybody familiar with this at all? So yes, he had a really interesting, we'll just say rule, where 5 minutes early was on time, and showing up on time was showing up late. Well, as you can imagine, this is very difficult for people to understand, right? Like, if I'm supposed to be here at 10 o'clock, why do I have to be here at 9:55? And so they almost had a mutiny. He kind of relaxed his way of leadership and became a little less authoritative. And I think all of those players, once he started to explain why he had his rules in place, really started to buy into his system. This led to them winning a championship. and then 5 years later winning another championship. And this is all great. However, as we're familiar with, NFL stands for not for long, and it is very much a what have you done for me lately league. And in 2015, they were on a different path. They were losing, they had lost a lot of players to injury and retirement, and he was struggling. And what Coach Coughlin really realized was that I am having a really tough time connecting with this younger generation. I don't understand them. I don't understand what motivates them. I don't understand how to lead them. And what I really like about Coach Coughlin is instead of sitting there and saying, hey guys, I've won 2 Super Bowls, do what I tell you. No, that was not his style. Coach Coughlin's style was to look inward and say, okay, what can I do better? How can I change my leadership style? How can I become a better leader to help serve the players on this team? So what he did was he actually commissioned a group to come in and study millennials and present to their coaching staff over a 3-day period on what millennials are, what motivates them, how best to lead them. And you can see here the Wall Street Journal, Coach needs help with millennials series. But if you're familiar with Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. And I think this is at the core of what Coach Coughlin was trying to do. I'm not going to stand in front of my team and say, guys, do you see these 2 Super Bowl trophies over here? I don't want to hear any lip. I don't want you to question me. I want you to do what I tell you to do. We all probably have similar experiences where we've maybe tried to do that and haven't had experience, especially with this younger generation. They do not care about what happened in 2011, right? It is all about what can you do for me now? How can you help me? And so what this really study did was give them an opportunity to really analyze what they were doing in their leadership and how best to understand this new generation of players. Coach Coughlin's a 70-year-old football coach. These players don't even know what he was doing before he was the head coach of the Giants, and they don't care. They're 25 years old. How is he going to possibly bridge that gap? So we talked about millennials, 1980 to 2000. I think what I'd like to focus on is really the influences on millennials. Things we're all very familiar with, the technology and the media. These are people that have always grown up with cell phones, connected to the internet, very up and down economy, the terrorism, violence, climate change. It was mentioned before, the trophy culture. Hey, I'm supposed to get a trophy because I showed up. Hey, Coach Burk yelled at me, so Mom, can you come handle this, please? This is very real. Now, in terms of traits of millennials, I think some of the things that are interesting about them are they're diverse, and they're very accepting of diversity. They're very media savvy. They're great at multitasking. And one of the interesting aspects of them is that they're very collaborative in the way that they work, in their working style and in their leadership style. And another thing to consider is that a lot of times, if you are their first job after college, it is probably their first job. So just some of the personal characteristics of millennials, what they value: authenticity, being social. We mentioned it before, having the ability to kind of blend their work and their personal lives. Big on innovation and efficiency. In terms of their communication, text, email, internet. You know, it's really interesting. As a young football coach, one of your jobs early in the preseason is to put together a playbook. And I don't know if anybody in here has ever seen an NFL playbook, but it is literally this thick. And I'm not joking, okay? They're put in 4-inch binders. I mean, they are insane. But the really insane part, aside from having to put it together, is that you hand this to a 22-year-old and you're like, oh, hey, so we're gonna run half of these plays on Tuesday. So can you go learn all these plays? People don't learn like that. I would make the argument nobody has ever learned like that. And what they found out in Coach Coughlin's millennial research, and actually it's interesting, a lot of other teams have done similar research. San Francisco 49ers, New England Patriots, Detroit Lions. And one of the things they discovered was that millennials don't have an attention span. It's very common to have these hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long meetings, sitting in rooms just like this, watching film. Some of you might be football nerds, but that does not sound really exciting, does it? Okay, and the lights are off, and it's cold, and it's like, it is nap time for those guys, okay? So if you're gonna run a 2-hour meeting, is that even efficient? Does that even work? I think some of the other work characteristics to potentially look at and take advantage of, the multitasking aspect. They're very collaborative, like we said, and I think one of the interesting aspects is having the ability to challenge them. Sean, I believe you mentioned this too. They want to be challenged. They want to have ownership over the work. They do not want to be told what to do. Learning, again, is a 2-hour meeting beneficial, or should we have a 15-minute meeting followed by a 10-minute social media break? And that is actually something that NFL teams employ in their teams. And actually the Arizona Cardinals coach talked about how he noticed like the fidgeting ramping up after 20 minutes. And so that's when they allow them to go outside, tweet or IG post or whatever, and then they come back in and continue their meeting. We see this also reflected in the purchase choices of millennials. They're very driven by a greater purpose at times. Boxed water versus plastic water bottles. 100% recycled shoes. The one-for-one business model has really taken on great significance in our culture now, I think in part because of people's drive to be associated with something bigger than themselves. You wear Toms and it says something about you. It says that you care. And these are the type of people that you're dealing with when we're talking about millennials. So my research has led me to find out all the keys to motivating millennials, which is kombucha on tap, catered lunches, nap pods, and most importantly, a slide in your workplace. So obviously, this is not the key to motivating millennials. And I think a lot of times this is what gets all the press, right? Oh, Facebook is doing this. They have a slide in their headquarters and they can slide down to their 3 o'clock meeting. Okay, but nobody is gonna be motivated by that. That's just something that's like cute that they can put on the internet or take a picture of. I think that the way to connect with millennials and with your entire team is through connection. Connecting to the vision, connecting to the work, and connecting to the people. These are the 3 points of connection that can help you truly unleash the potential of your team. Connection to the vision. It was talked about before, wanting something that's greater than themselves, being a part of something that's greater than themselves. Nobody really cares if we sell 10% more this year, right? We all want to be a part of something bigger. So over here on the left is Sean McVay. He's the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams. Familiar with him potentially because we're here in Los Angeles? I don't know. Nobody really seems to care about football in Los Angeles. But before he arrived 3 years ago, Los Angeles had a terrible football team. They had won 4 games, and they had a lot of players that were very highly regarded that honestly were not performing really well. Considered busts. Sean McVay comes in, and 3 years later, they're playing for a Super Bowl last February. So how was he able to come in and change this culture and really change all of these players that were kind of seen as poor players and really take them to the top of the NFL? What he was really able to do was get them to believe in what he calls the we before me culture and really selling them on being a part of something bigger than themselves. It's not about winning the Super Bowl. It's about creating something special as a team, creating something special for the city. I was fortunate in my experience, as Mark mentioned, to work in the NFL, to work at the highest levels of college football. And one of the interesting aspects was working at SMU. Are there any college football fans in the audience? Okay, a few. Again, we're in Los Angeles, so that's actually quite a good, 4 hands is quite a good turnout. Okay. So I'm from Texas, so it's just a little different. So SMU was in a really interesting place where in the 1980s, early 1980s, they were the best team in college football. 1980 to 1984, this small private school in Dallas won the most games of any team in college football. Shortly thereafter, it was discovered that we were paying players, and there was these huge sanctions that were imposed, and it was called the NCAA death penalty. They were the only school to be given this penalty, and it essentially gutted the program. They had to get rid of all of their scholarships. They actually couldn't compete for 2 years. This is down here at the bottom right here, and when I showed up, this was 2006. They had not had a winning season since 1984. And in 2007, June Jones was hired as the head coach. Now, I'd already been there for 2 years under the previous staff, and I can assure you that we were losers. We were 6-6 my first year, but we were 1-11 in 2007. We were the worst team in college football, and now Coach Jones shows up. And he has a program that has not had a winning season in 25 years, and he has a program full of 18 to 22-year-olds that do not know how to win. They don't know how to show up and work. They don't know what it looks like to be a winner. So he had to come in and really sell them on something that was better than, hey guys, we have to win because I have to keep my job. Not gonna really motivate 18-year-olds. But one thing that he did that was really great was he really got the team to buy in to team success as a prerequisite to personal success. So everything that we did, whether it was in a meeting, whether it was in the way we talked to the press, was about the team success. Oh yeah, that's great that this player was named Player of the Week. We're not really about that. We're about team success here. Now, I'd love to tell you that he came in, we wrote team success up on the whiteboard, and we won 90 straight games. That is not how it happened. We went 1-11 again. And one of the cool things was this doesn't happen overnight. And one of the things I have a lot of respect for Coach Jones about was that we never changed. We knew exactly what we wanted to do. It was all about team success, and we're not going to stop. And guess what? We're not going to change. And I think that consistency and I think that focus on team success really helped us. In the next year, we ended up winning 8 games. We went to the Hawaii Bowl, and we were able to kind of break the curse of the NCAA death penalty. I think when we're thinking about vision, meaningful vision is going to be key to the millennials and the young people. They want to know how they fit into that vision. They want to see something greater than themselves. They don't want to sell 10% more. They don't want to just win games. They want to come through for the people that are next to them. They want to come through for the other people, the other guys, as we used to say. And they want it to align to their personal vision, too. They want to be part of that team that turns SMU around. They want to be part of that team that turns around the culture of the Los Angeles Rams. The second point of connection is connection to work. Gallup does a study every year. It's an employee engagement study of the American workforce. And you can see here, there's like a slight trend in that top green line and the engagement of US workers. So in 2012, it was 30% of US workers were engaged, and now it's all the way up to 34%. That's great, nice. However, what that means is that 2 out of every 3 people in the US workforce does not feel engaged in their work. How do we as leaders take a step further in our leadership and get them engaged. That means every single meeting you're at or attending or conference call you're on, 2 out of 3 people in that call do not care. They're not engaged. So what are things we can do as leaders? So think about a disengaged coworker. Can anybody share what might be an effect of having a disengaged coworker, or maybe 2 or 3? Loss of morale.
No creativity.
Lack of creativity. Resentment. Sure, 100%. And would that have an effect on the people that are around those disengaged workers? Obviously that's so. And so I think this is really important, is to really find ways to engage those people in their work, to allow them to find that meaning and be engaged and feel like this is important to them. Now, one of the positive things is that 9 in 10 employees were willing to forgo some pay for consistently meaningful work. How can we do this? I thought it was really interesting. I am a big fan of one of the former CEOs of the Ford Motor Company, and when he took over, he kind of went back to Henry Ford's original vision to kind of get the company back on track. And Henry Ford's original vision was to open the highways for all mankind. Wow, that's really great. That's a lot better than let's sell 100,000 cars. So in what ways are we trying to engage our workers and let them feel like the work they're doing is meaningful and is aiming towards a greater purpose? Creating that sense of purpose in the work, I think one of the ways to do this is by giving ownership, allowing them to take that ownership on how to deal with their day-to-day behaviors and activities. Doing something that matters to other people. And lastly, ongoing skill and technique development. It was mentioned, I think 2 years is the average time that we can expect for a millennial to be at our company. And yes, there's that side where, you might think, why would we develop this person? Well, what if you don't develop that person? Then what's going to happen? And so I think really getting them to buy in that the work that they're doing is going to open up doors for them in the future. And as we talked about, being honest and open about that and transparent. The last connection point is connection to people. This is probably the most important. Early in my coaching career at SMU, I had a coach that said to me, players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. He used to say this all the time. And at the time, I was just like, oh, that's like Coach V's thing. He always says that. But as I grew older and as I started to have my own experiences in coaching and dealing with young people, I started to understand that this was probably the most true statement that I came across in my coaching career. We can all probably think of leaders or maybe somebody important in our personal lives that really had a true impact on us. We never are saying about those leaders or those coaches like, man, Coach Burk really got after me. Man, he really held me to high standards. Yeah, that's good. But what we often say is, man, Coach Burk cared. I hope that's what they say. So how do we do this? Right? I would make the argument that it's really as easy as having real conversations with people. So this is Tom Brady. He's probably the most recognizable football player in the world. And Tom Brady is entering his mid-40s. So he's 43, 44 years old, and he's playing with a majority of his teammates that are 20, 25 years old. How is he going to connect with them? Well, he has a very simple way, which is he walks up and introduces himself. Hi, I'm Tom Brady. Very simple. Tom Brady does not need to do this to these rookies. Half of these rookies are going to be gone in 6 weeks. He's never going to see them ever again. He is the biggest star on the planet when it comes to football, but yet he's the one that walks over to them. Hey, I'm Tom Brady. Yeah, I know. You're the 6-time MVP, world champion. We know. But yet he's doing that as a leader. He's taking that step to connect with them and having real conversations. And interestingly enough, when asked about it, Brady talked about understanding the perspectives of young people in the millennial generation as a way that he can help himself improve so that he can improve his performance, therein improving the team's performance, right? So he is always trying to find that different perspective, and instead of looking at it like, oh, this is a challenge, this is an obstacle, he's looking for ways to use it to his advantage. The Golden State Warriors are on an incredible run in terms of basketball. It's on a little hiatus at the moment, but they're going to get some players back in about a year, and they'll be right back on it. But they've had a 5-year run that is unprecedented. Yes, they have amazing players. But what they also have is amazing chemistry. There is a reason why Kevin Durant, the best player in the world, would choose to go to a team like that, probably full well knowing what the backlash is going to be against his legacy. It's because when these guys all play each other, they're all just playing. They're playing, they're doing their job, but yet the Warriors are having fun. They love playing with each other. I'm not a Warriors fan, but I cannot help but be like the biggest fan of Steph Curry, right? He's fun, he's always having fun. And one of the reasons why they talk about that is their team dinners. And so when you're in professional sports, it's very different because it's very businesslike. Not everybody is friends. So when you're on the road, typically you have a night free and you're gonna go off and do your own thing or meet your friends in that city. Not the Warriors. They go have dinner with each other. This is actually very, very rare in pro sports. And they talk about the ability, Steph Curry right here, talking about it just continues to build the camaraderie that you need to be successful from year to year. So they're using that as kind of a secret weapon of theirs to build that personal connection with each other and continue to build their secret sauce. As Mark mentioned, recently involved in esports, and for those of you that it seemed like there were actually more people familiar with esports than there were with football, it's competitive video games, and it is extremely young. As young as the NFL and college football is, pro esports is a different world. People that are 18 years old making $300,000-$400,000 being brought here from Korea and China and Finland to be on these teams. Suffice it to say, it was a challenge for me to try and adapt my personality and my leadership style to deal with these types of people. I say types of people, just like a different type of personality than I was used to dealing with in football, which is very extroverted, very dominant personalities, to esports, which is competitive video games. These guys have become great by sitting in their basements playing video games their whole lives. They're a different breed than a football player. So how do I, as a former football coach, come into those situations and try and help them, help improve them? Well, I quickly realized that it was not going to be me coming in and saying like, oh, hey, at UCLA, we did this, so you need to do this. They're not going to listen to me. They have no interest in any of my football background. What did help, though, was how I explained to them that my leadership parallels into their leadership with their esports team. How building out a professional structure and way of doing things on their esports team can be mirrored in the exact structures that we created in college and in pro football. One of the interesting aspects was I show up the first day and I was like, hey, yeah, we'll meet at 9. I show up, nobody's there. It's me and the team president and the head coach. Where is everybody? Yeah, actually, we were wanting to tell you, can we meet at 11 instead of 9? Oh, why? Yeah, we don't get here till 11. Like, you don't get here to work at 11? Yeah, we don't work till 11. We don't get here till work till 11. So I started to explain, like, hey, you're gonna have meetings, you have like a whole day of practice, like you need to prepare for all of this. And they're like, no, this is esports. Like, we don't do it like that. We just show up and play. Like, sometimes we'll change out of our pajamas, but like, we're just playing. Like, it's all good. And so I was kind of explaining like, hey, you know, preparation is key and all of these like key coaching points that I had for them. And they didn't want to hear any of it. But I just kept hammering it week after week. And I kept that 9 o'clock meeting time, by the way. Like, I was not going to budge on that. Like, that was late enough as it was for me. But slowly, every week, God, I'm just like not prepared for these meetings. I feel like I don't have enough time. Yeah, so like, again, if you show up at 9 as opposed to 11, you'll have that time, and you can use that time to prepare and really put your work in. Well, 4 or 5 weeks of this goes by. I'm saying the same thing. I show up for that 6th meeting. Oh my gosh, Evan, you will not imagine. I feel so much better this week. Oh, awesome. Like, tell me what's going on. What's our breakthrough? I started showing up at 9, and I have like so much more time to prepare. It's like, wow, okay, that's great. All right. I thought we were going to be working on vision. I didn't realize we were going to be working on like our start time for work for the first 2 months. But one of the keys was walking into that room and really showing them that I cared and really trying to connect with them and not getting upset and understanding that there was going to be a little bit of learning about each other before I could truly have an impact through my coaching. So again, in terms of connecting to people, great relationships matter. This is definitely going to matter to the younger people. They want you as a leader to be authentic and to be real. They do not want you to be perfect. Being vulnerable is actually a good thing. In creating an environment of support and trust, where they know that you care about them and their development. So these are the 3 connection points. I would encourage you guys to implement these in your leadership and on your teams and truly unleash the true potential and help your team perform at a higher level. Thank you.